This is the tutorial for the interchangeable sign inserts. I'm going to show you how to do both of these in one tutorial because they're fairly quick. So if you did them as I did them, I'm just going to go ahead and squirt my paint straight onto a paper plate. Get your circle, and I painted mine white. So you're going to use your foam brush. The most common technique I show you is to, in all my other tutorials, I'll show you to keep your brush angled up so that you're not painting the sides. But realistically, the insert is going inside the ring, so you're not even going to see it. So I honestly wouldn't worry about it. Once you get to the edges, you're going to kind of, as you see that I do, I kind of just follow the circle as I'm going, but then before it dries, I'm going to go back and make sure that my paint is showing all one direction. If you bought both inserts, I would do them both at the same time. So while this one is drying, I would set that aside and I would go on to the He Is Risen. Or if you just did one or the other, then skip forward if you haven't done this one. So with the He Is Risen, I scored the letters to try to make it easier for you to line up. When I did mine, I did not have it scored, and so I didn't want you guys to get frustrated if you couldn't line them up. So let me know if you don't like that I scored them, because maybe you wanted to do, I mean, it's a pretty small circle, so I tried to realize that you probably couldn't get too creative with the lettering. So if that's not something, if you don't like the guides, make sure you let me know, and I will not do that for next time. But I'm trying to eliminate some of the any frustration that you might have, which might be from trying to line it up. So make sure that you're doing really light coats. You don't want to try to have full coverage on the very first time. It's going to look gloopy and it's just not going to look too great. With the He Is Risen, I sent a toothpick. Mine is, I don't know if you can see, the lighting is so bad right now, but I can still easily see my guidelines. If you are afraid that you've like put too much paint in so that you can't see them, take your toothpick and score around the letters so that you can make sure that you keep those guidelines. So I'm going to let that one dry. And my bunny one is already dry, so I'm going to give my bunny one another coat. I don't know if you could tell in the example photo, but I did the bunny, I did 2 full coats of white because I wanted it to have a completely white background. And then with the He Is Risen, I only did 1 coat, and then I went over it with sandpaper to try to give a slightly distressed look. Not much, but I liked how it looked a little bit more antique that way. Okay, so now I'm going to let that dry, set that aside. Now I'm going to go on to my letters. So if you did the He Is Risen, they are super small, so I sent you with some tweezers. So you're going to want your white wedges. As far as the bunnies go, I would just use the full wedge. But as you're doing your letters, if it seems like a full wedge is too big, you can go ahead and cut them lengthwise with some scissors to have like a smaller area to cut with, if that's easier for you. It really doesn't matter. That's 100% personal preference. So we'll do the He Is Risen first. Let me set these over here. Okay, So you can either, if you don't if you don't worry about your hands getting messy, you can hold the letter down, or you can hold it down with tweezers while you go. So you get your white wedge. You're going to, can you see that? You're going to dip just the edge in the paint, and then you're going to dab it off on the side so that you just have a little bit of paint. And then you're not going to wipe. You're just going to dab up and down. Now, I don't know if you can tell, but it's definitely not fully covered. Same thing, when it's black coloring, it really doesn't matter because the sides of the laser cut wood are burned, and so it's dark. But when you're doing like a lighter color or a bright color or whatever that's not a dark color, then you're gonna really see the paint overlap. So that's why we want to do 2 really light coats. And it really doesn't take that long. So if you wanted to use the tweezers, you can just hold the letter down. It actually makes it really nice, especially with these little tiny dots. That's why I decided, after I made this one, I decided it would be best if I found some tweezers, because it was kind of a little bit of a pain to glue like the little tiny dots down. Okay, I'm gonna let that dry. I mean, they're pretty much already dry because you're doing such light coats, but I'm gonna let those completely dry. I'm gonna show you how to do, I'll do one of the bunnies. What color did I do? Blue for the straight ears. Okay, get a different wedge, a clean one. Same concept. Dip it into just the corner. Dab off the extra. And this is where you're going to do really, really light dabs up and down, especially once you get to the center, or the edge, the exact opposite. So I start in like the center of whatever area I'm working on, and then I work to the edge. I don't know if you can see. I need to set up an actual videoing center because I just move from room to room, whatever one doesn't have kids or dogs or noise at the moment. So you can see that if you're doing like really, really light dabs, it doesn't spill over. The edges still look nice and clean. Now, if you want to go ahead and try to paint the edges, then don't even worry about this. Just slap some on. I still would do light coats. I would do multiple light coats just so you don't get any drips, and it's just going to look a lot better if you take your time and do a few really light coats. Okay, I'm going to push pause. I'm going to go through and finish. You're going to use the same technique for the bunny tails, for each bunny, and for the green. So make sure that you do, like I say, just do multiple light coats, and then we'll come back to put everything together. Okay, I didn't paint all the bunnies because I've already made mine. So you're going to have to pretend. I sent everyone with a little pieces of sandpaper this time. And so that's for 2 different reasons. Even if you want full coverage, you're going to want to do 2, maybe 3 coats that are really light. And then if it's not completely smooth, like you can see the brush strokes, or maybe just a few bumps because the wood isn't perfect. So when you put moisture in the wood, some of the grain sometimes raises. So you can lightly sand that so that it's really smooth. Or like I'm going to do with my, that's a good catch. With my He Is Risen, I only did 1 light coat. And then when that is completely dry, you don't want to have it wet at all when you're sanding. I'm going to lightly sand it so that it kind of leaves it a little bit distressed. So this is my bunny one. And I'm not going to sand over my freshly painted words. And that just makes it super smooth. Okay, to put the bunnies together, you're going to put, I mean, if you want to follow the example photo, where their ears are pointing down is the side that they're on. So for instance, is this opposite in the video? I don't know. But whereas his ears are this way, his ears that are pointing down, that's the edge that he's going to go on. So when I'm looking at him, his ear is pointing left. So he's going on my left. So this is an old super glue. So I'm going to see if, nope. I'm going to have to get me a new one. Where did I put it? Oh, right there. Okay. So you just tighten it and that activates the super glue. The lid was on really light. Oh, and when you're doing that, don't open it over your workspace because sometimes there's pressure that builds up and it comes out and then ruins your stuff. Okay, so on the back of the bunny, a little super glue goes a long way. So I mainly just stay, can you see that? Like basically outline it, but more towards the middle. Then I'm going to put him, I'm going to kind of lay out how I want things to look right there. And then you just press him down for a few seconds and do it with the next one. So I am going to, I literally am touching the tip of the super glue to the wood. If you do it too close to the edge, it's going to splur out and you're going to see it. Sometimes you can't help that, but I'm going to try and press that down. Then what I did with the bunny with the ears sticking straight up, clearly only a little bit of his side, a little bit of his ears, and his feet are touching. So I am going to, that's the only places that I'm going to put super glue. So kind of on his feet. I'm just going to put some on the side and then on the edges of his ears. There's no point in doing it everywhere. And just press for just a couple seconds. And then as far as the tails go, just a little dot right in the middle is all it takes. Can you see that? It will be better when I have a professional video set up. I just need to buy something decent. Okay, and then once it's completely dry, I wouldn't do it immediately like I'm doing and flipping it around. But once it's all dry, it's going to fit perfectly in your little interchangeable. So that's the bunny. Now let's go with the He Is Risen. Okay. So first, I want to distress mine a little bit. Mine might have still been a little wet when I did that. Okay, so I can still, can you still easily see my guidelines? I did not put guidelines on for the leaves because just in case you wanted it like on the sides, but I'm looking, you might not even have enough room. So that might have been, you have a little bit. But just in case you wanted a little bit of wiggle room on creativity on that one. Okay, so this is where you might want to use the tweezers. I'm going to go ahead and on the bigger pieces, use my fingers. But if you want to make sure that you don't get super glue on your fingers, you can hold them with the tweezers if you wanted to. I'm going to show you a technique I use with the tweezers with the dots that I highly suggest using. Okay, so remember, a little bit goes a long way and you want to stay as far away from the edge as you can, which is a little bit harder with these smaller pieces. So you don't need to glue every single millimeter of a letter. So I'm just going to do where it's thickest. So like down this line, this curve, and then a little bit here. And I'm just going to do the same thing, basically touch the tip to it a really thin line. And then line it up with the score and press down for just a few seconds. Oh yeah, make sure you wash your hands in between. Like I just got a little bit of white on that, but this is kind of my throwaway piece. So I was thinking of time, not professionalism. Okay, on this one, same thing. I'm going to do the I, this part of the S, this part of the E, this part of the N, and that part. So just a little tiny bit. Maybe wipe the extra on the very end of that N. And then line it up. And these are thin pieces, so they're easily manipulated to exactly where you want it to go. Okay, I'm going to show you the technique I used with the dot. So you have two choices. I got my tweezers and I held it like this. You can either put a little super glue on it like that, or if you're not super comfortable doing that, you feel like it's going to glob everywhere, you can put, where there's no paint, you can put a little bit of super glue on your plate and then dip your dot in the super glue and then place it down. And that's it. So follow that for all the letters. Finish painting your greenery. I guess I can show you if you wanted to use the tweezers. With the greenery, I would just do, can you see that? Probably not. Just hit some of the leaves. Okay. And I would just, when I'm measuring where to put that, try to keep these ends even. So like across, like if you're drawing a line, you probably can't see the he is. Normally I would have glued that down by now, but anyways. So that is how you would put those together. And then once they're completely dry, here's your interchangeable sign. Pop the whatever one you had in there first out, or maybe this is your first one. And then this one sits right in there, or your bunny, depending what you decide to display. Let me know if you have any questions on how to put together the inserts.